Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Classroom to Corner Office Career Talks with Chris. Today, I'm joined by Evan Newman, who is a nonprofit association professional specializing in membership and social media services and marketing management for nonprofits. So, Evan, thanks for joining today. And if I butchered any of that introduction, feel free to correct me. I'm glad to have you here and share your professional journey and some wisdom you can impart on young professionals and those looking to make a transition in the workforce.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me. I've enjoyed the last few episodes that I've been able to tune into. I think this is a great way to give back to students who may be listening to this from West Liberty or other schools that may be thinking, okay, how can I get involved in a different career path? I think that you've highlighted a lot of different and neat journeys for folks. So I'm excited to share a little bit about my path and association management, nonprofit management. It's kind of a niche space. It's one of those pieces that a lot of folks don't know about, but it's a great career move, in my opinion. I think that those in business management or marketing or communications, or even political communications, may have may see a path after our conversation today for themselves professionally. So I'm excited. Thanks again for having me.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's part of this discussion, finding roles and opportunities that not only put your talents to good use, but may be lesser known or at least not as realized as true opportunities, especially given backgrounds, experiences, and the talents that you have. So to start out, can you just walk us through some of the key steps in your journey, your career journey, that have brought to you where you are today? And were there any turning points that really transitioned you into more of this nonprofit space?
Yeah. So, good question. I will start. I guess at the beginning. I won't treat this like an interview, but I'll start at the beginning. I always tell folks whenever chatting with them about my journey into association management and the world that I kind of navigate now is that as I mentioned, it's small, it's niche, but there is an association for everything. So you may be thinking association, what as you're listening to this. Think the American Dental Association, think the Chamber of Commerce, but maybe for a niche industry. We can get into some of the industries that I've worked for over the last 10, 12 years of my career. But honestly, I worked on a political campaign or two whenever I was in the Ohio Valley at West Liberty. Got involved with a local leader there that was in the House of Delegates running for state senate. Always kind of saw my communications journey going there and being political communications. Was lucky to work for this individual's family for about a year in a car dealership environment, actually. So had the opportunity to work on marketing there and do some management work, and really blessed to get that opportunity. But one of the salespeople actually mentioned to me at one point, like, "Hey, you have a college degree. You're a smart guy. Like, you haven't hit the lottery by working at this car dealership." And that's not to negate anybody that's found a career in that space. He was just like, it's long, it's tough hours. There's a grind with the sales process. It's not consultative sales, kind of like you definitely enjoy. Explore a different path. You're young, I guess was his point. You can always come back to this if you think you liked it. So fast forwarding a bit, what that looked like for me. I was a founding father of my fraternity at West Liberty, Phi Delta Theta. I was given the opportunity to work for Phi Delta Theta for 2 years after graduating on a 2-year contract as a leadership consultant. I traveled the Midwest, parts of Canada, the Great Lakes region, as we called it, and got the chance to consult chapters on recruitment, retention, engagement policies, and best practices and things of that nature. Out of that, I connected with someone who worked for the Ohio Trucking Association and said, "Hey, here's an opportunity for you to really work and engage in association work. This is a good overlap with your experience. You understand board governance because you were in student government at West Liberty, and you understand political communications, which is a huge part of local association work because there's advocacy work that we do based on different regulatory needs." And I was like, "What's an association and what's trucking? What's transportation?" I didn't have a clue, but this individual, his name's Tom Balzer. He's a mentor of mine, someone that I stay in regular contact with, talk with at least once a month. He really believed in me and set the tone for the rest of my career. And now I've worked with 4 different associations over the course of my career. Been really lucky to do that. Worked for him for about 4.5, almost 5 years in the Columbus market. And then COVID happened, and he didn't lay me off, but there was an opportunity for my wife, and so we moved to Northeast Ohio to chase that opportunity. And now I'm lucky that a lot of association models have gone to remote work, so I've been able to continue this work, but in a remote setting and for national associations, not just for state-based associations. So to answer that question, that's how I kind of got into it. Communication paved the way for exploratory job opportunities, but then really the fraternity paved the way for me to get involved because Tom Balzer, as a volunteer, said, "Hey, I would like to hire you after you're done with your time at Phi Delta." So that was a cool and meaningful way to get into the world and way to meet a mentor I still consider to be one.
Yeah, and also demonstrates the power of your network for personal and professional.
Sure.
And I think, having that opportunity to travel with Phi Delta Theta, connect with those various chapters and meet these people, I'm sure at just, the local, regional, and national scale. So for you, obviously, there was value in that network. Whenever you're meeting people, those people that you want to create a connection with, whether that's a short term connection or a long term connection, how do you approach those conversations to really gauge if this is a valuable person that could be helpful personally and or professionally? How do you approach those conversations, and not what hope you get of it, because I don't want it to seem transactional, but initially you kind of have to do a little vetting of, is this person
Yeah.
I want to connect myself with?
Yeah, by all means, I think we should, protect our circle, if you will. Fraternity advisor, whenever I was at West Liberty, used to say that you're the sum of the 5 people you spend your most time with. So I think that really making sure that you protect that circle of 5 or 6 people, whether it's neighborhood friends, colleagues, peers, or professional acquaintances, and it can be more than 5, but I think 5, it was just kind of the, hey, here's one hand, but making sure you protect and ensure that that's s folks that align with your goals. And I really think I heard it best put actually just recently, and I think I've always lived this way, but maybe haven't always been able to articulate it. Is that what are your values? Are those folks' values in alignment with your values? So taking out the end goal, but understanding that are these folks that I'm connecting with, engaging with, what are their values? Is it you know, is it family? Is it friends? Is it work life balance? Is it work and putting forward your best foot in your work and taking pride in the work that you do? And also wanting to kind of elevate your association or your organization in a positive way. That's the beauty of association work, is that we are really mission driven at its core. We're working towards a mission or a value that helps an industry, whether it's trucking or snow and ice, where I'm at now. I think that we're helping an industry to identify best practices, identify solutions to keep their people safe and keep their people operating at full force, if you will. So those are just 2 examples, but I guess how I always identified it was values based. Do these folks' values align with mine? Because at the end of the day, people join people. They don't join the association or the fraternity or the sorority that we align with. But now more than ever, people are looking to, for lack of a better term, embrace community and embrace networking, and that's why I think associations have long term value in any marketplace.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And you touched on values. You're also involved in local governance, local politics, right? So, definitely something that, giving back to your community, giving back to that local area and that region. With that, there's political realities that exist, whether those are ones that we embrace or ones that we find challenging or that we, want to, distance ourselves from. How do you balance those political realities and staying true to those personal values that you've developed throughout your life and within your career?
Yeah, yeah, good question. And it's one that may be hard to articulate, but I think that ultimately what it comes down to is understanding what and why you're doing what you're doing, and by that I mean that you need to educate yourself on what's in front of you. I think that all too often, whether it be local, regional, or even state or federal politics. All too often, folks don't educate themselves on what they're kind of getting themselves into, or what the long-term ramifications of maybe a piece of policy or a piece of legislation will do for the community. They're just looking at the short-term win. We work in election cycles, if you will, as is kind of talked about in the mainstream news, but it's true. So I think one thing that I've always looked towards is actually a mentor of mine politically used to say, like, never get involved with local politics. It's just kind of around, it's like a roundabout fight all the time. So I texted him whenever I was appointed to my city council seat, and said, hey, I didn't take your advice, got involved in city council. But it really came down to the fact that I had just had a daughter, or we were expecting our daughter, excuse me. No one else knew. And I was expecting our daughter. And I said, hey, here's one way that I can get involved locally to set the stage for her success and for the success of the community, to ensure that it's a place where she can thrive in the future, and any future children that we have can thrive. So I think really keeping that as a compass. So for me, it's family. What can we do locally? Luckily, we don't have to deal with some of the very politicized realities of federal politics or state politics. We're really taking a look at economic drivers, financial drivers, and how it impacts the community and the people within the community. Those are sometimes very convoluted and confusing issues, because there's grants tied to them, or there's different legislative priorities from a state level that are tied to them. But at the end of the day, I think we can all come to the table, regardless of political party, on setting up our kids, our grandkids, our nieces, our nephews for future success, and ensuring that they want to stay in small communities like West Liberty or like Salem, Ohio. I think it's a great blessing to be able to raise our kids in Appalachia, where a lot of folks do not have the opportunity to stay around. They move away for greater, greener pastures. But going out, securing better jobs, securing greater future for our family, and making sure it's a safe place to live. That's what it all comes down to. So I mean, that's why I ran. That's why I've stayed engaged, and that's kind of the benchmark of why I do what I do. So financial and economic success are definitely the drivers, because I think that leads to prosperity elsewhere.
Yeah, we still on the path. Was it Newman 2032 for
I don't think
president?
we're on that path quite yet. No, it was that, but no, I think that that's an unrealistic path for me. The pack that I put together has not raised nearly enough money to get me where we need to go. But maybe one day. Ultimately, as we were talking about, as you when you reached out, it's like family is number one priority for me right now. Spending time with them, spending time with my wife and my two children. Very blessed in that way, and I'd love to give back locally, but I think that I'll let someone else fry those fish on a federal level for now. So, yeah.
For now, right? We're gonna leave it open ended. I like that. I like that. You don't want to discredit or say that that's not an opportunity,
All
right?
right.
Sooner or later,
Right.
that pack will come through. Don't worry.
Yeah.
All right. So, throughout your professional journey right now and even into local governance, what skills, whether those are technical skills or soft skills, did you learn earlier in your career that you still rely on or fall back on today because you've developed them to such a high degree, even if you didn't really understand or realize the value they had at that time that you were acquiring them or developing them?
Yeah, good question. I think that I don't really love the word or the terminology soft skills, but I'll use that one for lack of a better term. I think that those soft skills are something that we're always coached, I guess, at West Liberty. I think that's one of the values of liberal arts education. We become definitely well rounded and better understanding, and maybe how do I want to how do I want to put this? We become more well-rounded, better understanding, and more open to sometimes challenges. That's not to say everyone, but we're willing to maybe be flexible and malleable in our ideas. And maybe just because Chris wants to get to it one way and Evan wants to get to it another way, we can find ways to overweave and overlap that plan to get there. So soft skills were definitely something that was kind of coached into me for a long time. Again, back to connecting and networking. It all starts with the right question, and engaging with the right people with that question. There's a good book out there called QBQ. You could read it in a day. It's called The Question Behind the Question. And I try to read it once a year, just kind of remind myself what are the questions behind the questions that we should be asking to get where we're going. So I guess where I'm going with this is always be learning, and always be ready to learn. We don't know everything, and things are constantly changing in today's workforce. Things that I did 10 years ago in the association space that I thought were groundbreaking are no longer groundbreaking. So, how can we identify that? We ask good questions. We say, hey, what does this data mean for the association, for the member, so that we can set up a better member journey? So, I was a communications major with a marketing minor at West Liberty, and you know, some of those things they're hard to sell in the professional world. People don't always understand what that means. So we really kind of take the approach of we sell it more as marketing and business marketing. So we could lay out a marketing plan, we could lay out the project management side of that, we could lay out how we utilize social media, and I could preach to you about how all those things are important. But it really comes down to what are the questions and how are we utilizing the data to develop that project management plan, to develop that marketing plan, to develop an onboarding plan for a new member, because that's what's really led to success in my career is membership, recruitment, retention, engagement, all comes out of that and grows out of that.
Yeah. Is there any like specific example or examples that you can point to about, how the change in the workforce being flexible and adaptable has been a reality in your life, whether that's kind of within your current roles or just trends that you've noticed within the industry or that you've noticed in the larger workforce?
Yeah, yeah. So shameless plug here. I host a podcast for SIMA, the Snow and Ice Management Association, where I currently work. And in that podcast, I used to spend an hour with someone talking about what they wanted to talk about and engage on, and really spent a lot of time in prep work for the show because I wanted it to be meaningful for those listening. That 30 to 45 minutes that they were investing with the association, I wanted it to be meaningful for listeners. Still do that prep call, but now it's 10 or 15 minutes. We identify 4 or 5 key points, and we've started to utilize AI to help build some of the scripts and some of the questions. I think that AI is a great tool for efficiencies like that. That's not, so 18, 19 months ago, I wouldn't have been using it. I doubted AI and I was like, hey, I'm not going to utilize that. And it's just a fad. So I think that that's one example. And that's just a small example. I think that, again, taking a look at automations that we utilize in our new member onboarding process, those are things that I used to manually send those emails. I'd set reminders and tasks within our CRM or association management software, whichever one you kind of want to call it. Now I don't manually do that anymore. It's all automated. It's just work smart, not hard. It's not to say you don't work hard in other areas, but for things that you have tools, when you have tools like that, let's utilize them so that you can work harder in those other areas that are going to be more beneficial in regards to profit or opportunity for the association.
Yeah, being able to spend more time in that strategic planning, making
Right.
those changes along the way that need to be made because of a change in this or that. I think that's, for me, that's something I've noticed a lot of quality applications and valuable applications of AI and other types of new resources, programs, systems really just helps me. I mean, what we're doing today, right? We are recording on a platform, a web-based platform that afterwards
Yeah.
allows me, and I know you use this platform as well, to pull clips out, right? And it develops clips based on whatever your preferences are. So, I'm able to pull 4, 5, 6 clips out, edit them for, 5, 10 minutes each, and we've got content for a week.
Yeah.
So, that's a whole lot easier than pulling a whole video file in, clipping it up, and then making them yourself in
Right.
that way.
Right.
So,
It's a beautiful tool that we used to take hours maybe doing, and I think that more of that is on the horizon. I think we need to be careful about how much maybe we utilize it for certain things, but if it frees more time, to your point, for us to be strategic and thoughtful in our approach, then it's a win-win for members, for the association, and for the relationships that we're building. It gives us more time to pick up the phone. It gives us more time to engage with the members on what they need versus the time that we are spending editing prior to, right? So that's what it comes down to for me.
yeah, no, that's awesome. So you're driven, you're ambitious, you've continued to find ways to build on your skills, learn. Earlier in your career, how do you think you helped yourself stand out in a way that was recognizable that made people say, "Hey, come here and have a conversation with me," without maybe overstepping, right? Because many times people that are ambitious and driven may feel like they're bursting through the wall and nobody wants them to be through that wall yet. So how did you find that balance early on to catch that attention, but not make it feel like you were going for somebody's job, right? That was
Yeah.
of you in that organizational chart.
Yeah, I think that it's really just being confident in who you are, and I know that's easy to say, and not really quantifiable. But I think that that's one thing I've always taken pride in, and that's one of the best compliments that I get is like you're comfortable in your own skin. You are who you are. Like I I get jokes quite often, like, even in the workplace, like, "You're 31 going on 75." Like, you're just comfortable who you are, you have an old soul, and that's just who I've always been. So I think that, being that way, being confident in who you are, but also being aware. I guess confidence is one thing and being aware is another thing. So you mentioned, how do you stay aware and not step on toes or not, be disingenuous. So I think one way that was able to do that is speaking of associations, getting involved in a professional association myself. Again, going back to my point about there being an association for everything, there is the American Society of Association Executives. So it's built for association executives who are managing their own association or doing membership work like I do, or marketing or sales or what have you. And then there's state and local regional associations. So I'm involved. I'm fortunate, blessed to be chair for the Ohio Society of Association Professionals this year. I've been on the board for almost 6 or 7 years. And I was one of the youngest board members that got involved with the association because I had a boss who empowered me, going back to Tom Balzer, who said, "Hey, we're going to go to these events, we're going to go to these meetings, and you're going to engage, you're going to be a part of the solution and not a part of just people sitting back and complaining." So one, having a mentor and a boss who believes in you and motivates you is a big thing when you're young. Making sure that you asked about setting at the right table with the right people, that's huge. I think that you can't always choose who your bosses are, so that's not to discredit anybody that's in a situation that doesn't allow for this, but picking a situation professionally that's going to work best for you, and then going to those meetings and soaking things up. I talked to people that were 10 years older, 20 years older, 15, 30 years older, in a way different position in their careers than when I was. And I just asked questions. I learned, I soaked things up. I asked how I could get involved. I think that that's another big thing that young people, looking back at 22-year-old Evan, like I didn't know how to necessarily say, "Hey, let's get involved," but because other people said, like, "Hey, this is an open opportunity. This is an open association. There's opportunities to be involved here." I said, "Okay, how do I do that? How do I engage?" So just finding ways, asking those questions to be involved, asking for those opportunities. Those were definitely ways that I think I stood out in a room, attained that membership. So I was in charge of the membership committee before I got involved with the board at OSAP, and it was just a great opportunity. It's been a great opportunity to pave the way for my success. It's helped me understand board governance at a completely different level because instead of being in a boardroom, I'm on the board. So it's a really unique opportunity that I've had to learn and engage. So getting involved, and maybe it's not a professional association, maybe it's your local chamber, your local junior league, your local, your local Rotary or Kiwanis. How do you get involved and get back and talk to people who are in different parts in their career journey? Because without understanding, through these conversations like this, like what opportunities are out there, where you're putting yourself one step behind the person who is, right?
Yeah, that's super important for anybody listening, right? That
Right.
right there. If we're talking about the clip, there's a clip, right? So, building on that, if you could leave any of the listeners with any additional pieces of career advice that apply to anybody in any industry with any title at any point in their career, it may be building off of what you just said, but what would that piece of advice or bits of advice be?
Yeah. Good question. And one that's hard because I think that as you know, Chris, like you've been in some different seats within higher education. Now in your role, you're really kind of finding a niche where you're getting to teach and impart wisdom on people. But you've always done that. So really, that's been the goal of your career, is imparting that wisdom and imparting learning lessons on students, maybe just in different ways and in different roles. So for me, it's always been about how do I help other people get the best out of what their career looks like. So for in association management, you usually serve one kind of sector of a career. So again, from the fraternity to the trucking association to practice green health, where I worked on sustainability initiatives within the hospital network, to now the Snow and Ice Management Association. It's how do I set people up for success? It goes back to the old adage of you plant the seed for the tree that you're never going to bask in its shade. And that's one thing that I've really embraced within the association world is that's my way of helping and giving back to people, planting the seed for an emerging leaders program, planting the seed for a new automations or for a new breakout session or networking opportunity. Because if I hadn't taken advantage of some of those things, emerging leaders programs, networking opportunities at the show, and a new person reception at an event that I went to, if I wouldn't have taken advantage of those things, I wouldn't have gotten as much out of my association membership as the person who didn't take advantage of those things. So I guess what I'm getting at is taking advantage of the opportunities. So building on that, asking the right questions. I've mentioned that a few times here. And then finally, not to be afraid to take on a new opportunity. I landed in association management, not because I knew anything about it, not because I saw a career for myself in it. I honestly thought, hey, I'll be with FI to help now. I'll get back into politics. Politics will always be there. I'll go be a political communications advisor. Or I'll try to start running for office. Then priorities shifted, and I wanted to say, hey, how can I help people in a different way that's a little less divisive, a little less disingenuous, and maybe an opportunity to say, how do I set people up for their career journeys? And with association management, you have the opportunity to do that. And I've been able to make a career out of it. I did take a quick 6 month stop in the for-profit sector. And it just, didn't end up being a good fit for me. I think that again, going back to my point at the beginning of this conversation about values, their values within that company didn't align with mine. And that's why I left. So, and got back into the association world where we're working towards a common mission. We're working towards a common cause. And even if it's just as simple as saying we're making the trucking association or trucking industry or the snow industry X% safer over time or X% more profitable over time, that's meaningful for the people who are working and doing these things day in and day out. That's what's meaningful to me, taking advantage of opportunities, asking the questions, and engaging with people on a meaningful level to hopefully set them up for success. And hopefully they'll say, hey, that person helped me out, or that person, Evan, he said hello to me at the right time at that symposium and walked me over to the breakout room where I connected with Chris, and Chris really unlocked the future of my career. It doesn't have to be me that unlocks the key. It's just me that makes the introduction. That's one of my strengths finder pieces is connector. So I enjoy connecting people. That's what it comes down to. I don't have to be the one with all the answers. I just want to make sure you're connected to the right people that have those answers. So I think taking pride in that and saying, how can we do more of it? Because that's what society is about, people and communication and community, right?
People meeting people and then people helping people,
Yeah,
right? I think that's part of that. People helping people is the outcome, but you have to meet the people first, and
right.
right, they have to align with who you are, your values, and what you see yourself involving yourself with, whether that's professionally or personally, politically. Which you've hit on all of those throughout this discussion. So, Evan, this has been great. I do want to give you an opportunity. You've mentioned some mentors, some people that have helped you along the way. Is there anyone else you want to shout out, give some love to for what they've helped you do, whether that's now or in the past?
Yeah, yeah. So I have a laundry list. Not all of them have I kept up with. I think that's how do I put this? I say this with no disrespect to some of the folks on this list that I'll mention, but I think mentorship, sometimes in mentor programs, we get all formal about it. And you're like, oh, yeah, I have to have a call with this person every week, or I have to, connect with this. I think that is unrealistic and honestly disrespectful. Frankly, I think that people's time is worth something. So ensuring that, hey, let's connect when I need something. And that's an important part, or when you need something so that we can connect and engage together. And if that's every day, sure, that's awesome. If it's every week, that's great. If it's once a month or if it's once a quarter, that's awesome too. So take advantage of your mentorship network, but don't make it formal. Make it something that's meaningful to both of you, and so that both of you can engage together. So taking a look at my career, I mentioned the political candidate I worked for, Ryan Ferns, was a great mentor to me, and someone that I was blessed to call a friend, and blessed to call a friend. I know that there's been multiple times I've texted him and asked him questions, and he's given me thoughts. Moving through my college career, it's people like you, Chris, and people like Jim Constant who really believed in me and trusted me, and I appreciate that. I look at people like Bob Biggs, who I worked with at the fraternity, who his great grandfather was a Civil War general or something of that nature, buried at West Liberty Cemetery of all places. Served in the Virginia State Senate or Legislature, one or the other. He never came to initiations for fraternities. He was the executive director of the fraternity. I shouldn't say never, but rarely. He was that was something he was winding down in. And he came and believed in me. Saw an opportunity there. Went on to work at the fraternity, and if it wouldn't have been for him and a guy by the name of Mike Waba, there wouldn't have been that opportunity for me to grow there. And there's so many others. Tom Balzer, I mentioned. Scott Rich is a person I worked with at Practice Green Health who it was the fraternity connection that was the reason he hired me. He wasn't a Phi Delta. He was a Delta Sig, I believe. He'll probably kill me if I got that wrong. But, him and I laugh. Like, he's like, I hired you because I knew that you understood what association management looked like because of that fraternity world. I talked to him about football more than anything, but still we stay in contact about things. And he's given me a lot of coaching here recently. And then, of course, my current executive director. And again, not every boss along the way is a mentor, but I look at Martin Torado, who's my current boss. He knows that eventually I'd like to be an executive director or CEO of an association of my own. So he's really brought me in on conversations that are critical and engaged with me on meaningful conversations and dialogue about governance and engagement and staff management. And those aren't easy conversations to have with a 31-year-old, but they're meaningful to me. And he doesn't know how meaningful they are at times. And then, of course, Jared Claybaugh, who's the executive director, CEO for almost 10 years now of the Ohio Society of Association Professionals. I mentioned that association quite often. So it's those ones that are meaningful to me. So I took up like 3 minutes of shout outs there, but it's those people. And then I would be remiss if I didn't mention the two most important people in my life, and 3, 4, my wife believes in me, which I really appreciate her undying and support. My mom, who's always thoughtful and encouraging me, even though she doesn't even, it's kind of like the Chandler Bing, like, what do you do for a living? What's association management? Okay, yeah, good, you go get it. And then my kids, who are just awesome. They're 3 and 6 months old, so they don't understand what I do for a living, but they inspire me every day. So
There you go. This may be the most lengthy shout out, but I
yeah,
think that goes to, the journey that you've had and the people along the way and the relationships that not only you form, but then you value and then call back on, whether that's every 1 month, 6 months, 3 years, right?
yeah,
There's a reason those people in your life, and there's a reason that they find their way back into your life over time,
yeah.
personally or professionally. So I think that speaks a lot to the value that you have gained from them and also the value you bring those to relationships all the same. So
Yeah, I
don't
probably
discredit
missed a
yourself in
few.
in
Yeah,
that.
I probably missed a few, and there, that was like a very long Oscar winning ceremony there that I probably drug on way too long. But it's those people are all meaningful to me, and they hold different positions in life. And you know, I know I missed one that just came to mind, but it's just like there's so many cool people out there. Get together with people, engage with them, even if it's only for a short time in life. Learn what you can, I guess, is my best piece of advice is learn what you can from the people you surround yourself with. And that not in a selfish way, but people are interesting. They do interesting things. And even though you may not think it's that interesting, it probably is. So it's cool.
It is, it is. Well, thank you again, Evan. Appreciate your time. We'll hear more about other people's career journeys along the way in the next episode of Classroom to Corner Office Career Talks with Chris.